So I'm sharing my screen and let's start with our Ukraine and Moldova trip, discovering Eastern Europe. It is a distinctive part of Eastern Europe, 10 days, 8 nights from May 20th to May 29th of 2022. It will be a very nice time to go there. We will talk about that too. Ukraine is our main destination. So this is Ukraine here, surrounded by Russia on the east, north, and Moldova in the southwest, I would say, and Black Sea here in the south. So capital Kiev is a country of about 41 and a half or 42 million people. Kiev is the biggest city with a population of about 3 million people. So along the banks of the Dnieper River. So we will fly into Ukraine. I'm sorry, fly into Kiev, the capital, first. And our trip includes not only Ukraine, but also Moldova, this little country to the west, as I mentioned. And it comes with a bonus, which is Transnistria. So you get two countries, and the third one is free. We will drive through Transnistria, this small patch of land here, which we will talk about in a short while. So we fly into Kiev, the capital on the bank of the Dnieper River. It is the economic and cultural center of the country, especially after the independence from Soviet Union in the early 1990s. It developed and it gained its former identity, Ukrainian identity. So our trip will cover the different identities, the different cultures, and different aspects of this interesting country. So this is one view, and the view of the historic uptown of the city, St. Andrew Church we see in the background, which we're going to climb up the hill, not walking, but by a cable car, and we'll have an opportunity to visit, and I'll talk about that in a short while. The time that we are going to spend in the capital in Kiev, we will see a number of places and things from different periods, from old, from new, technological, historic, cultural. So this is the historic part. This is what remains of the fortification from 11th century, the Golden Gate. Originally, it is from 11th century. Of course, it was reconstructed a bunch of times, and it was reconstructed, or it was not reconstructed, but originally it was constructed, just imitating the walls of Constantinople, the capital of Byzantine Empire, which is today's Istanbul. And we need to remember that 11th century, now Ukraine and Ukrainian Kievan Russians, Kievan Khanate, that was established starting from the end of 9th century and then developed 7th, 10th century, at which time, during which, when Byzantine Empire had its, was more or less on the peak of its power, at the peak of its power, and the Orthodox Church and Orthodox Patriarchate of Constantinople had its power all around, from Moscow to Kiev to Middle East, from Athens, Greece to northern Egypt. So all the populations here in this area, they turned their faces to Constantinople. That was the city that they aspired to. So the city walls, they tried to kind of imitate the fortification of Constantinople and the gates of Constantinople, which we're going to see. And we'll talk about this interesting effect and interaction during the visits of various churches and monasteries. Now we will see a bunch of churches that reflects kind of the soul of Ukrainian people. And from outside, of course, we can, we may confuse them. Just they look very similar with the onion domes and golden gilded, domes and similar architecture. It is relatively easier if we just try to remember the colors. This is the blue one with the golden domes. This is St. Michael's Monastery and Church in the center of the city, close to our hotel. So this is one of the churches that we are going to visit, the blue one, St. Michael's. This is, well, original one was built during the Middle Ages, but then it was destroyed and renovated and rebuilt a number of times. This is from 18th century. And another one we are going to visit now. This time, this has the green domes with, again, gold gilded onion domes on top. St. Sophia Cathedral. Of course, again, an attraction from or with Constantinople. It was named after and built kind of to imitate the Saint Sophia, Hagia Sophia of Constantinople. If you have been there, that magnificent, huge building, originally built in the 4th century over there in Constantinople, and then the second one built in the 5th century. This was built much, much later in 11th century. But the important thing is here inside. This is, if you have ever seen a Byzantine church, be it St. Sophia in Constantinople or the churches in Ravenna in Italy, for example, they have similar architecture inside, similar mosaics and similar iconography that was mostly dictated by the Constantinople, the Patriarchate of Constantinople. You have to just draw this here, that's, and your Mary, Mother Mary should be here, Jesus should be here, the evangelists should be here. It was all kind of the dictates of the center of the empire, which was Byzantine Empire at the time. We see this interaction all the time. Now, after this monastery, we will go up the hill. Of course, we will not just, we will walk down, but we will go up by the cable car, as I mentioned before. The photo shows the main road, main avenue going up the hill to St. Andrew's Church, St. Andrew's Cathedral. So this is called St. Andrew's Descent, actually, coming down. And it connects the upper town with the lower town, with the commercial district down the hill, which is today called Podil district, the name of the neighborhood. So along the road, we will see right and left various small shops and souvenir sellers. And just we need to again remember that, all the way from ancient Greece to Romans, well, that was a little bit different. But upper town, Acropolis, it was always for the temples, for the holy, for the palaces. So on the top of the hill, what we have here is the St. Andrew's Church. And downtown, down the hill, it was for the lay people, for the merchants, for the villagers, peasants. So up the hill, St. Andrew's Church. Now, this is how we're going to differentiate this. This has the dark green dome with golden, gilded on the corners. Looks like, Fabergé egg. I'm sure you have seen, Fabergé eggs in various museums around the world. So a close up here. So we will have an opportunity to see this church also. This is architecturally a little bit different from the others. Russian Baroque. This was built by an Italian architect during the time of Peter the Great in mid 18th century, when the place was under the domination of Russian Empire. So from upper town, from St. Andrew's Church, we go downhill through the St. Andrew's Descent down to the Podil neighborhood that I mentioned before. This was this is the location where the the city originally was, more or less. It is the center of the commerce, of the industry, the city center until the 19th century. The university is along the way, downhill, the port on the bank of the river, the shipyards. So main economic activity took place in this portal neighborhood. And fortunately enough, the most of the structures from 19th century, late 18th, early 19th, mid 19th century, they were spared, not destroyed completely, and renovated mostly. And so we see all this colorful neighborhood in its old
Nice.
original beauty. Yes. So the Portal neighborhood. Now this is the historic story, the historic face of Ukraine. There is another face to it, the contemporary technological face to the country. Here, what we see an Antonov uh, airplane. Now, this was produced, the Antonov airplane factory, close to Kiev, a little bit outside the city. And one of the mornings we're in Kiev, we will have a chance to go to the factory and visit the production. Now, this is an interesting part of Ukrainian technological and economic development. Ukraine, it has its own space agency. It is building satellites, and it's throwing those satellites into orbit with rockets. So they have developed, of course, partly thanks to the Soviet technology, how it developed, and partly their own brilliant minds, like this Oleg Antonov, who gave his name to this factory. He was an airplane designer during the Soviet times, and he was born in 1940, not born, born in the beginning of 20th century, studied first in Kiev, then in Moscow, and then he was given the job to start aircraft production, and the location chosen was his hometown, Kiev. So the factory was formed here, and he started developing his line of various carriers for transportation or for cargo transportation. So that production continues. Partly, of course, we will visit the factory. There's no guarantee that there will actually be workers there. This is not a consumer product that they continues to product, but they produce the planes on demand. So in any case, we will visit the factory. Another important Ukrainian that I have to mention that we know of very, I'm sure, about him, that is Skorsky, Igor Skorsky. He was born in Kiev. He is a Ukrainian engineer, but he immigrated to the States in 1919, and he developed, what did he develop? He developed the chopper, the helicopter technology.
Yeah, school.
And yes, he is the one who actually basically invented the helicopters. And he established the Skorsky helicopter factory in Connecticut, just on Route 15, driving to New Haven on the east side. Just you will see the big Skorsky sign and the factory over there. So that's another Ukrainian that is quite familiar to us here in the US. In any case, continuing with the Antonov, still being used, these aircrafts, and this is a scene from, just to celebrate a finished product here. So we will have, we will spend about half a day to go there to get information about the aerospace industry, about the production of airplanes and everything, about the technological development of this industry in Ukraine. Now, from these macro, the big size items, we will come back to Kiev to see micro items.
Wow.
Here, yes, Kiev Micro Miniature Museum, and the Museum of Artwork that we can see under microscope or by magnifying glass. These are the works of a Ukrainian artist, Nikolai Siadristy. And we will see the museum, his, as you see in the eye of a needle, he managed to, you know, build all these little miniatures, little sculptures. So we will see that. Our next day will start with a visit to one of the important sites of the city, the Statue of Motherland, from where we see the statue itself, plus a nice view of the city. We learn about the history of the motherland. Now, the Statue of Motherland, this is also something common in former Soviet Union countries. In a number of them, they have this, hill on top of which they have this statue dedicated to the motherland. Although I believe in Russian, the land, the native country is called fatherland rather than motherland. In various parts, in Ukraine, in Armenia, in various other Central Asian countries, former Soviet Union countries, you mostly have, called it motherland, and there's always a depiction like this. So we will visit this hill with the Statue of the Motherland on it, and afterwards we will visit one of the highlights. This is a monastery of the caves, Kiev, Perchursk, Lavra, and this is a World Heritage Site in the center of the city. And this is a monastery of the caves because originally it was built in small caves. Now these caves and catacombs we will mention a number of times during the tour because of the geology of the area. This is mostly limestone, so the original settlers, they were able to carve into that limestone, and whether there were originally small caves which they carved out to be bigger, or they carved from this scratch, they formed a monastery. They established and founded a monastery in this location. And afterwards, of course, that was in the 11th century, at the beginning of the 11th century. Afterwards, of course, new buildings were erected. The big church and big monastery was erected, and it grew bigger. So we will have a chance to visit this monastery of the caves, which is a World Heritage Site in Kiev. Another place we're going to visit will be the Ukrainian Treasures Museum. This is the outside. It is a relatively small museum, but it houses very important archaeological artifacts from Scythians. Scythians are the people from all the way back from 7th century BC. The Scythians, they occupied the steppes, so Ukrainian steppes, all the way to the Ural Mountains. And they managed to spread out and invade to the east towards Central Asia, Northern Caucasus, and even down towards Iran, towards Persia. So their golden artifacts, which were excavated from various sites of their settlements, they are in this museum, which we're going to see. Some part of this exhibition actually was in Washington, D.C., in the Smithsonian Museum. Now I don't remember how many years back, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years back. So I had the opportunity to see them for the first time in the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. But the original, they are here. And they are artifacts for those of you who have been to the Central Asian countries in Bishkek Museum, and the capital of Kyrgyzstan, for example. They also have a part of these Scythian golden artifacts. So those of you who have been there must have seen these golden artifacts. Now, from Kiev, we will fly down south, Oressa, to the coastal city, the city along the coast of Black Sea. Here I have to just mention one thing. Now, along the Black Sea coast, here again an interesting part of history that goes back all the way to the ancient Greece, and that connects the history here to Trojan War of all the things in history. Now, how come? Now, Trojan War, if it's ever took place, most probably it did. That was about 1300 BC. Now, Troy is what is in today's within today's Turkey, borders of Turkey. To the south of Istanbul, the Dardanelles, right, on the banks of Dardanelles. Now, at that time, the ancient Greeks, although the story of the Trojan War that tells us, about the, you know, jealousies between gods and goddesses and how fate plays a role in the lives of people and everything. That drama aside, the economic necessity of the war was the ancient Greek people from Athens, from Sparta, from all those coastal cities along the Aegean coast. They wanted to cross the Dardanelles and the Bosphorus into Black Sea to form trade colonies. That was the main reason. So what we see after 13th century BC, starting from especially 10th century BC, we see a proliferation of Greek trade colonies along the Black Sea coast, a number of which are within Ukrainian borders today, to the east and to the west of Oressa. And the artifacts from those trade colonies, ancient Greek trade colonies, are today in the Museum of Oressa, which partly we're going to see. So we'll fly to Oressa, just having summarized this little history here. This coastal city, this is an aerial view of the city. And apart from this connection to the ancient Greece, this was known as a Tatar village in 15th century. Before that, it is also connected to Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan's sons and grandsons, they were here at some point, and they were in Crimea, and they fought against the Italians. And just, they were the ones who actually caused those rats carrying bubonic plague to go on the Italian trade ships and go all the way to Italy and start the plague over there in 14th century. So the history is all connected in an interesting sense here. Oressa is one of those centers on the Black Sea coast where we can reminisce that history. So from being a Tatar village in 15th century, it developed into a more European looking seaside city. Here we see its modern city plan. In 19th century, again, during the time of the Russian Empire, a French immigrant, Duke of Richelieu, was given the job of being the governor of the city, who then gave the job of reconstructing the city to a French architect who came up with this straight line Cartesian plan.
So, hold on 1 second. It looks like I have somebody else joining just now, Marie.
Sure.
Hold on 1 second.
Yep.
Whoops. There.
Marie? Or Mary? Marie?
Oops.
Can you hear us, Marie? I don't see you, and I see that you're muted. Just making sure that you can hear us.
She can't.
No, she could. The muted, that means we cannot hear her, but she hears on the other end. Marie? Okay, Alyssa, I think let's just go ahead and she will chime in, if and when. Thank you.
Sure. Yep. So, so we were talking about Oressa and how it was developed in 19th century as an imitation European city. The architecture of the city, which we're going to see, is actually quite similar to 19th century European cities, and that was the case for a number of cities in the Russian Empire at the time. Yerevan, the capital of Armenia, for example, was constructed again in this style. So similar architecture. Here, Oressa, this is the Opera House, and this is one of the highlights that Oressa is famous for. Potemkin Stairs. Now, it was not originally named Potemkin Stairs. This was formal entrance to the city. This is up from the hill. It goes down to the port, the old port. So the ships, the visitors, They, of course, come by ships, seaway, and they disembark and they face these stairs as an entrance to the city. They have to climb up and go into the city proper. So this was designed in 1825. The construction was in 1830s, but it became famous and it was named Potemkin Stairs after the silent movie of 1925, Battleship Potemkin, the director of which was the famous Russian director Sergei Eisenstein. Now, this is a historically important movie, although it's a silent movie of 1925. It narrates a mutiny on Battleship Potemkin and how the people of Oressa joined the soldiers, the mutinying soldiers of the battleship, and how the mutiny was repressed by the soldiers of the Russian army at the time, of course, Russian Empire at the time we are talking about. And the famous scene of the soldiers attacking the people and the mutinying soldiers of the battleship that took place on these stairs here. So this is a scene from that movie. That was a revolutionary movie of the time because of the technique that he used in directing the movie. So in the history of cinema, it takes an important part. So these stairs were named after the battleship Potemkin Stairs. And what we see today is this, people just happily walking up and down. And it's one of the main attractions for visitors and for natives alike. So we will have a chance to visit the Potemkin Stairs and about other locations in the city. Of course, there were a number of small palaces for various princes or governors, various members of the nobility. Now, during Soviet times, most of these palaces were converted into small museums or used as administrative buildings. Just one became a museum of literature, the other a museum of music, and this one, Museum of Fine Arts, Palace of Potocki, named after the one of the princes of Russian Empire. So it's today a museum of fine arts, which we're going to visit. Of course, the artwork is interesting, but of course, in addition to that, the building itself, the ornaments, the old palace building, it is interesting in itself, which we are going to visit and have the chance to be guided by a curator of the museum. After that, during our time in Odessa, we will see the catacombs. Now, this is another, just reference to the underworld. Again, as I mentioned, in the Monastery of the Caves in Kiev, this is the same kind of structure. The limestone base of the city, it was carved carved into a huge network of tunnels. And the limestone that was carved out, that was used in the construction of the buildings of Oressa. So, but the catacombs were used as catacombs, and they were but mainly used and famous for the defense of the city by the Russian partisans, Ukrainian partisans during the Second World War. The catacombs in Moldovanka district, we will learn about the Second World War history, how the partisans of the time used these places as the base in their fight against the occupying Nazi forces, German forces at the time. So that's an interesting part of the city. And in addition, of course, being a seaside town, it is an important economic center. Its seaport is the biggest in Ukraine and one of the biggest along the Black Sea coast. So we will also have an opportunity to spend 1 or 2 hours to visit the seaport and to get some information about the economic activity there, especially during these times where supply chain disruptions are in the news all the time, and we have all these discussions going on, when this is going to ease out and everything. Just seeing all these, what is that, that the port and, the ships and the sea traffic, and talking about the commercial activity here will be quite interesting. Now, our day in Odessa will end with a highlight with something relatively soft but strong. That is the Cognac Museum, Shustov Cognac Museum. Now, cognac, as I'm sure you know, that's the brandy. Brandy that is produced in the Cognac region of France, and only that brandy can have the designation of cognac. But thanks to the relations of Russian nobility with the French nobility of the time, this Shustov family in 19th century, during again the Russian Empire, got the right to call their brandy that they distill here to have the designation of cognac. This is the only one outside of the Cognac region of France. So we will just visit the production facilities, and then of course we will also have the chance to taste the cognac of various ages, I should say. This is another interesting part of the city. Now, after our time in Oressa, now we will drive into Moldova, and here this way. Now, this is the Dnieper River, the big one that divides the city of Kiev, and the small river here that forms the border of Ukraine and Moldova, that is Dniester. Now, Dniester is Nistria, and there is this where the arrow points to, this Tiraspol, and this little area, this called Transnistria, a small self-proclaimed independent country of Transnistria. And Transnistria meaning across Dniester River. So we will drive through that little enclave of a country into Moldova, to the capital of Moldova, Chisinau. So on the way to this autonomous region, we will visit a historic castle, Tigina Fortress from 15th century. Now, we talked about the Russian Empire, we talked about ancient Greeks and Moldovans and Tartars and Mongolians. We haven't talked about the Ottomans. Now, this is the time to talk about the Ottomans. Now, this was built in the beginning of 16th century, by about 1538, by the Ottomans, because they were here. They were just trying to expand into Russia, and from the beginning of 16th century all the way to the beginning of 19th century, the place was more or less, under Ottoman domination, especially Crimea. So this is one of the fortresses of the time that we are going to visit, built by the Ottomans and later occupied by the Ukrainians and Moldovans. So we will learn about the history of the Ottoman history and Moldovan history of this region, and we will enter into Tiraspol, the capital of this Transnistria, the autonomous region of Transnistria. They proclaimed their autonomy, of course, after the end of the Soviet regime, Soviet Union, at the beginning of 1990s. There was a discussion with Moldova, and then in 1996, they proclaimed their independence. But today, their independence is not recognized by any big country. Their independence is recognized only by just a number of small self-proclaimed countries like Nagorno-Karabakh, for example, in between Azerbaijan and Armenia. That is again a self-proclaimed area. So it belongs to a small, network of self-proclaimed independent regions. And we see they take their Soviet history, their Soviet connections seriously. All the, hammer and sickle and their former insignia from the Soviet times uh, at the entrance of the city as a symbol of the city. And this is the main square where we see just the Lenin statue over there, still proudly standing as it had been since the Soviet times. And a tank. This is the city hall, and the tank from the Second World War period, the Soviets used against the Germans. So we will visit this small enclave of Transnistria and drive to the capital of Chisinau. Now, how it is spelled, you see on top of the screen. Now, this is the Moldovan people. Just I need to make this distinction that Ukrainians, they are Slavic people, and Ukrainian language, yes, there's a Ukrainian language. It is kind of similar to Russian, a Slavic language in itself. Whereas Moldovan people, they are not Slavic, they are Latin, and they are related to Romanians, and their language is totally different. It is like it's a Latin language, it's a Roman language family group. And when you see something written in Moldovan, just you need to pronounce it as it is pronounced in Italian, for example, if you are familiar with Italian at all, Chisinau, so this is pronounced. So culturally, they are totally different from Ukrainians, and they are more closer to Romanians, as I mentioned. That's the capital. The total population of Moldova is about 2.5 million people, and the capital Chisinau around 640,000 people. There is one main street here, and just we will see the main street. Our hotel will be very close to that, and we will have we'll see the parliament here, and the Arch de Triomphe, the Arch of Victory, which was again built during the time of Russian Empire in 1840s to commemorate the victory of Russians over Ottomans in 1829. So the main metropolitan cathedral of Chisinau here we are going to visit. And the famous personality from the 15th century, Stefan cel Mare, Stefan the Great, the historic figure who brought together Moldovans in 15th century. This is the statue in the main square of the city. So after a visit of the city, another important part of Moldova is its wine production. It's famous for its wines, for its vineyards. So we will visit a vineyard, Krikova cellars. Now, this is again underground. This is the cellars, like catacombs carved into limestone. This is 75 miles of cellars from 15th century, carved in different periods, and all lined up with bottles and casks of wine, which we are going to taste over there in a kind of lush tasting hall, I should say. There are a number of different tasting halls, so it may not be this particular one, but this is one of the tasting halls over there. And especially during the Soviet times, Moldovan wine was the wine, in addition to Armenian wine and Georgian wine, that was sold for all over the Soviet Union. And now today, the main export is to Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And afterwards, we'll drive outside in the countryside, the Butucheni area, where vineyards are and the agriculture is. We will have a lunch in a farm. We will taste the Moldovan specialties, and we will visit a 13th century monastery over there. and come back to the city for our overnight. And the next day we will fly back. So that will be the end of our trip to Ukraine and Moldova with the bonus country Transnistria on May 29th. So let me just stop sharing my screen and turn on my video
Thank you.
here. So it's going to be a really very interesting trip, multifaceted, history that covers different periods that initially people don't have an idea that Ukraine may have, or that area of the world may have this kind of a variation in history and connections to all around the world.
And I would
So
say
it's
that
going to be an interesting trip.
most people would probably lump the two nations together, sort of, yeah, it's the same.
Yeah. Mhm.
And to really know that it's completely different languages, cultures, from the visuals that we saw in Ukraine to visuals that we see in Moldova, completely different.
Happened to me.
What, Nancy?
Well, my video here, I'll get back in there.
Yes,
Yeah.
you're back here.
Yes, okay.
Can you
Great.
hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Marie, we can hear you.
I have a question. You
Sure.
see, I understand like Ukraine, Dnieper, Cossacks, the people on the Dnieper. You don't have anything on your tour like that, right?
Well, that is correct. We don't have any Cossack location. That was a little bit out of the way, and just
Yeah, it's up
including
north,
those
right?
would be,
Yeah.
that is correct. Yes, a little bit up north and toward Lviv. And that would cost, at least 2 more days in the program. So we did not, but during our, just during the narration, during our visits, definitely our guides will give information about Cossacks and how they were formed and where they were located, and about Cossack culture, definitely.
And Elias, if I chime in, right? We are always very creative, and we know that our travelers have certain wishes that they want to do. And if
Mhm.
they have certain flexibility, and if time is one of those,
Mhm.
Marie, we always, welcome your coming in earlier to the country, and Elias, when
Yeah,
applicable,
we can definitely arrange.
he
Mhm.
can help a special kind of kickoff start for you if you come in earlier to see that part and then join the group as
Mhm.
well. So always keep that in mind. And it probably makes sense at the beginning rather at the end, because by then you're in a different nation, different country. But again, if that is of interest, that can very easily extend the trip pre the tour as well. So you have a chance to explore that part of the Ukraine too.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
My problem is the fact that if we're going to be in the Ukraine, I want to have some contact with Chernobyl.
Oh,
That is also just flying in 1 day early. Actually, it is possible to have a kind of long day trip to Chernobyl. That can be arranged. It's going to be a long trip. It's about driving and seeing everything and coming back. Can be 10, 11 hours, but that is doable.
Well, it's important, I think. I mean, that was a
Is
major
definitely
event.
important. That's definitely important. And there still is that radiation, risk. Of course, just going there and staying there, 2 hours, 3 hours. That it is. We didn't want to, just force.
Well, that's okay. I don't need
everybody,
to spend days and days. I just, if I'm going to be in the area, I want
Yeah.
to see it. I do.
Oh, definitely. So just, you can fly 1 day early, and we can arrange. I'm sure there may be, a few other people who might want to do that. And we can arrange a side trip to Chernobyl.
My other thing is, if you're going to be in Odessa, where the heck is aren't we going to see where everybody met, Stalin and Roosevelt and
Yeah.
Stalin, Roosevelt, yeah. Who else was it? everybody. Yeah, World
Actually,
War II.
yeah, Churchill. you
Churchill,
mentioned.
that's God. how
That's right. Yeah,
forget
the
him?
third person is Churchill. Actually, I'm not. Yeah, actually, that was there. Yeah. No, that is not quite close. But we will mention that. But yeah, Yalta
Yeah, because
you're talking about.
for heaven's sakes, it's
Yeah.
important.
Oh, definitely, it's important. Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
yes, it should definitely be included.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
And Elias, you said it's not close? It's not close to Odessa, or what
It
do you?
is Odessa. That's where they met.
No,
I-
Odessa. Exactly. Yes. So
Yeah,
we'll
it's
mention
right
that, but
there.
yes, structured. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
I love history, and so I
Yes,
know that
so do I.
that's where they
Yep.
were, and they were in Tehran and that, and they, they met all over trying to
Yes,
solve the
that's true.
problems of World War II at the end. And
That's true.
Odessa was the Russian place that they went. And they were,
That was okay. That was Yalta.
It was Sochi, no?
That was Yalta.
was it
Yalta,
Yalta,
yeah,
not
Yalta.
Odessa?
That was Yalta.
It was not.
Oh dear, sorry.
Pop
Yeah.
quiz.
Yeah.
Well, why do I remember Odessa? So I do remember.
I don't know.
Odessa.
I mean, I will double check, but I mean, that was Yalta from what I.
Oh, sorry about that. Something happened in Odessa.
I'm sure things happen in others.
It wasn't Odessa, Texas you're thinking about, is it?
No, no way. Oh.
Now, yours is such a fantastic itinerary, hearing again the old, the present, for I think it's important to us to know how the Ukrainian development and business and the life goes on, right? I mean, they separated and they are charging ahead. They lifting the satellites, so they are very well established and developed industry. So it's
Yeah.
and again, I very much appreciate again the understanding of the history and how one get there, but the conversation of today, because the conversation of today leaps you forward, right, from satellites to planes to all of that. So it's very interesting.
Absolutely. And yeah,
I'm
we'll
gonna
have a
look.
chance to include all those aspects.
Yeah. Mark, Sylvia, any thoughts on your side?
Yeah, we're interested in, I think, in the Chernobyl part or addition to that. I think the only other thing that Sylvia and I were talking about is that when Ilias goes to the picture part, that you shouldn't use your mugshot. You should find, from whenever you were arrested, that picture that you showed, you're doing the video. If you had another picture of you because you look so much more handsome, Sylvia and I both agree, in real life than that, and that thing just looks like it wants a number underneath your chest.
Yes, that was for a passport, actually. Yeah, I need to change that.
Yeah. So if I was to put a quiz, what is the national dish of Ukraine?
Good question.
Kiev chicken.
National dish of Ukraine. Borscht.
Starts with a
Oh,
B.
really? Borscht.
Borscht,
Okay.
yes.
Golubtsi also. Golubtsi is the wrapped cabbage, the stuffed cabbage. So, and if I was asking, what is the national drink of Ukraine?
Vodka.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
That was easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Marie, can you hear us still okay?
I
Is it
can.
Marie or Mary? I'm sorry.
Marie.
Marie. It's a trip, a destination you're possibly thinking about joining, or just learning about what we do when we get there?
Well, I went with whatever we went to 5 scans, Sue Blake and I.
Yes,
And
yes.
also Sue Blake went with you some other time. She really likes you a lot. So we went.
Yeah, I remember
together.
Sue Blakey. What was that? I don't remember which trip, but I remember.
That was the
We went
stance
to
strip.
Kazakh, we went to 5 scans and
Yes.
then we went some, before. I really would like to go to Malta and Sicily. And I would like to go Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. Did you ever go there? Did you ever do that?
We will, those, they will come in, in the coming years. Now, this is just, we are getting out of this are trying to get out of this pandemic, and we are trying to start with, more, let's say, potentially more places that are potentially easier to get rid of the pandemic and coming back to normal. So eventually we'll come to Armenia and Georgia, hopefully for 2023. And if there is enough demand, of course, from membership, because we can include that. In Malta and Sicily, that is a destination those destinations we are considering those two.
Yeah.
So they will come, definitely.
Yeah.
I just came from Europe, and the plane to Amsterdam and back was not even 10% full, because people don't travel to America yet. It was so great. I had the plane, 747 just for
Just started
myself.
2 days ago on this last Monday.
Yeah, it will be more now, but I really was like that.
Yeah. No, this is good. So I'm hearing Nancy, Mark, Sylvia. We need to do a quick Chernobyl. So Elias, would you and Maureen, since
Yeah, I
you're
can prepare.
also let's see what that means. Timing wise, if it is just as easy coming one day in, and it's a day trip around. There might be some cost associated with that, and see what that means. And when we run out of electricity on the bus, we'll just let you put your fingers out the outlets and bring on the lights. If anybody's battery's running low, we'll just charge you. You can recharge the phones. Sorry, I was actually in Soviet Union when it happened, so you don't see me, radiating green light.
Yeah.
That's all I have. Anybody else? Again, this is really, again, every time I see it, it involves all the senses, the visuals and the aromas. And again, you see the progression, the historical component, but also from the cognacs and the wines and what that mean. And I never knew about the story about the cognac, that they're actually allowed to do that. I would have failed that quiz for sure. So, yeah. Anybody else has any other questions or thoughts, or we can leave you with it, and you can always reach back to Maureen. Like I said, and make sure it's a good experience. But Sylvia, Mark, Nancy, you are committed and going. This is not a maybe. This is
Well, I plan to, but I'm not. Who knows what will happen between now and May? But yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Am I the only one?
No.
Sylvia, are you and Mark coming?
We're close on that. I mean, we've got Saudi Arabia coming up in January, and so we're kind of working through all that stuff. But we're very interested.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we have other members that.
But again, I also would like to have a roommate so I can cut down the cost a bit.
Sure.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I've done it before and it's worked out fine.
Sylvia's already committed to a roommate, so I can't really let her do that.
Oh yeah, well, I think yes. I understand. That's okay.
Yeah.
So.
All right. I mean, if everybody's in a good place, I'll leave you with the visuals and let you go to sleep and virtually travel to Ukraine and through Moldova and walk the streets of Odessa and climb the stairs of Potemkin.
Yeah, there's no railing on those stairs. How am I going to do it? I mean it, Elias. At my age, I like a railing, and that's a hell of a lot of stairs. And I didn't.
You won't have to climb it up. Don't worry.
I don't mind climbing. I really don't mind climbing. I just want a railing. That's all, and it isn't there. So. Encourage the government to put up a railing before May.
Okay, Elias, can you call your people, or do you want us to
let's see if they have it in their budgets. Yeah.
That's what we need to reinvigorate the tourism, so they can put the railing.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I'm in a good place. I thank all of you for joining us. Again, leave you with a really good thought, Elias. Thank you for for your help.
By the way,
Sure.
Ilias, I
Thanks,
want to know
everybody.